3, 2, live. Okay, everybody. Good evening, everybody. It's so wonderful to be back here this Monday evening. This is the 60. Ooh, I just made a mistake on the post, but it's the 61st class from our Mesilat Yesharim series, and this is abstinence number 6. So I'm really excited because this week we start a new chapter, chapter 15. And chapter 15 will deal with how to acquire this great trait of abstinence. So just a little housekeeping here. All classes will resume throughout the summer months. We're in the, it was so hot here in New Jersey today. Oh my goodness, like 103 degrees. Like, you'd think you go from New York to New Jersey, it'll be cooler, right? No.
It's only in the 80s.
Hotter.
It's only in the 80s.
That?
It's only in the 80s here in Houston.
The 80s, right? I heard it's raining.
Blowing south.
We've had a lot of rain lately, so.
Yeah. So that's number one. But also, just an important announcement that although classes will resume the entire summer, this Thursday we will not be having our Chumash class because that is going to be Tisha B'Av, the fast of the 9th of Av, which begins Wednesday night. So we won't either have Partners in Torah. Okay, so just very important, please note the scheduling change that Partners in Torah will not meet at torchzoom.com on the regular Wednesday schedule, and neither will the class on Thursday morning. But Wednesday afternoon's class, Wednesdays with Wolbes, will be on. And all the other classes, Bill, welcome. It's great to see you. It looks like you're in some beach.
Yeah.
So it is really, really very, very exciting. So I think I mentioned this in one of the previous classes that my rabbi said that because of our current situation, there are no breaks. So even though I am officially on vacation, which that doesn't ever happen, right? So even though I'm officially on a summer break, it's not a break because we have to continue learning Torah. Torah never stops. That's our motto. But also, during COVID, many people are not leaving their homes. Many people, this is their schedule, this is their life, their oxygen. So we want to make sure that you have that oxygen and that the Torah is there for you. But before we go right now and begin the 15th chapter, we just have to take this brief time out to introduce to you Hadassah. Hadassah wants to say hello to everybody.
Hi.
Say hi, everybody.
Hello, Hadassah. Who painted your fingernails?
I'm going to have to leave. My internet connection.
Say hello, everyone.
Yes. Hi. Oh, I almost.
She did her nails.
Nails, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Oh, what color? How pretty. Beautiful.
Who did that for you? Who did it? Say hello to everyone. Have a good night, everyone. Okay. Show your passing.
Who did you? Oh, sure. It's pink.
Everyone sees
Wow.
it. Okay, everybody. Good night, Hadassah.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm getting cookies.
Okay, yes, you can have. Of course you can have. All right, everybody. Okay, so now we're on page 298. 298, and we are at the beginning of chapter 15. Good night, sweetie pie. Okay, the way to acquire precious, the way to acquire this magnificent trait of abstinence. Now, we have to remember what is the purpose of this trait. The purpose of this trait is one goal. The goal is not to get carried away with the physicality, with the physical elements of this world. It's very easy for us to get lost into the abyss of materialism. And the one way to get away from it is to have this, to abstain from worldly pleasures, to the overindulgence of worldly pleasures. Now, we spoke about the different types, whether it's regarding food, whether it's regarding sleep, whether it's regarding, physical intimacy, whether it's regarding all of those different areas that are, even though they're all a mitzvah, they are still, if they are not done in a proper fashion, can take a person and remove them from their focus in this world. So now we're going to learn how to do it. Now, we were warned by the Ramchal. The Ramchal warned us in the previous chapter that this is not something that we are even close to just undertaking on ourselves to say, you know what, I'm going to start fasting Mondays and Thursdays. You know, there are many righteous people who fast every Monday and Thursday, right? It's a way of them getting to a higher level. That's not what the Ramchal is recommending for us, okay? We're, at least me, you're all holy people, but me, I'm a simple guy, right? And I'm not at that level Ramchal is telling us. And he says right now, just do mitzvahs, you know, do the right thing. You don't have to get to but at least we need to know that this exists. And it's very important for us to at least, you know, like we mentioned last week, even though we don't bring offerings, we don't have a temple. We don't have an altar. We don't have the Kohanim don't do their services the way they used to. We still say those prayers that talk about all the different offerings that are brought in the temple. And our sages tell us that it's likened to as if we had fulfilled these commandments of the offerings. So here I'd say the same thing, same idea, is that even though we are not at the level perhaps to observe this great level of abstinence, of perishus, but we should at least know that it exists. So that if we see someone at that level, we can appreciate it. Okay, so again, this is not suggesting here, then we have to understand this because we're living in a world that is called cancel culture, where anything that we don't like, we want to tear down, right? Anything we don't agree with, we tear down, and that's not the democracy. That's a world of tyranny, right? Where everybody needs to think the way you think, and not everyone does. We learned this many times. We don't have to think alike. We don't have to act alike, right? The only thing that we have that unifies us is the Torah. And the Torah tells us how to live our life. The Torah guides us in the exact way that we should live our life. And even within that, there are different paths for each individual. Okay, without any further ado, we begin. Hine haderech hamuvchar liknos es haprishus. The best way to acquire the trait of precious abstinence is sheistakol adam begrius ta'anugos ha'olam hazeh u'prisusam. For a person to reflect on the deficient nature of the pleasures of this world and their lowliness. Mitzad atzmam, in and of themselves. Meaning, recognize, okay, I'll give you an example here. Does anybody recognize that the world of Hollywood is a world that is no good? Anybody recognize that?
Oh, yeah.
It's not a difficult one. Why? They have tons of money. They have tons of fame. They have tons of anything you can possibly imagine, right? Except for
Morality.
well, morality is one of them. One of the things that they lack. It's one of the things. But I think it's like this. I think, Aliza, what's that?
Oh, I thought I was going to say a rabbi.
A rabbi. Well, yeah. So that's true. But I'll tell you like this. I'll tell you what I think they're missing. They're missing themselves. You know, as an actor, you know what you need to do. You need to act. So they think that their entire life is an act. And they forget who they are as individuals. So their marriages are not marriages, they're fantasy. Their relationships are not relationships, they're fantasy. Everything is an act, right? And they lose who they are. And they think that everything is going to be just as it shows on a movie. But that's not the way real relationships are. I always tell this when we talk about marriage and relationships, why so many marriages are failing in our generation. It's because of the advent of media, of television, of movies, right? Because everyone thinks, and they're just going to live happily ever after, walk with the sunset, on the beach, right? Holding hands, skipping along, and then the credits just roll up, okay? And the credits, right? And it's like, that's the end of the movie. And most, 100% of the time, they don't talk about the struggles of marriage. They don't talk about the challenges and how many times you need to work things through and That's right. So people want to have a romantic relationship because that's what they see in the movie. People want to have a right whatever it is, and that's not the reality of life. So what they are, and that's I think a perfect example of how it's taken to an absolute extreme. They have all the cars, they have all the money, they have all the women and all the men and whatever it is that they want. They have all of the fame, they have all of the success, except for internal, they're completely rotten.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So we see that, right? So why do people still want it? What do people do today when people post? And this is a real challenge. I don't know if there's been any studies done about this. I'm sure there has been, but people today are called prosumers, right? They're producers and consumers of information. You produce when you see a police chase down your block, right? And you video it and play it live on your Facebook, right? What happens? You become a producer of information. It used to be that we were only consumers of information, right? But how many of us go back to our Facebook after we post something to see how many people liked it and how many people this and how many people that? Because we also want to be, perhaps, just like those actors. We want to be famous and we want to be known. And we look how bad it's doing for them. It's not doing them any good. So why would we want that? Why would we want that? So we have to first identify what is good. And we discussed this many times throughout the learning of the Ramchal here in Mesilat, is to identify what is good and what is no good. Identify it for ourselves. What is good and what isn't good. And once we know what is good and what isn't good, we know what to stay close to the good, and stay far from the bad. That's not so difficult. That we can do. Okay? So what Ramchal here is telling us is that for a person to reflect on the deficient nature of the pleasures of this world and their lowliness, recognize that when someone gets immersed in a physical materialistic lifestyle, then what happens?
Your spirituality goes.
Your spirituality plummets. That is the reality of how this world operates. The higher you go physically, the lower you go spiritually, right? The higher you go spiritually, the lower you want to go physically, right? That's the way it works. You cannot be on a high on both. It's impossible. That's a myth. That's Hollywood. Hollywood is that myth that you can be in both worlds. You can also be spiritual and you can also be physical. That doesn't exist. So once we identify this, so what are we running after? We're running after more cars. We're running after more riches. We're running after more furniture and more houses and more, vacations. And for what are we running after? If we recognize for ourselves that this is not, right, what we are looking for, then why do we keep running after it? Okay. So mitzad atzmam, in and of themselves, these are deficient in nature, right? The deficient nature of these pleasures. As well as the great evils that are likely to result from indulging in them, as will be explained below. Okay, so he says in the commentary here, he says, although there are three aspects of life to which parishus can be applied, as described in the previous chapter, the focus of this chapter is on the first aspect, that of abstaining from non-essential physical pleasures. Non-essential is the focus here. Non-essential, right? My daughter tells me, Abba, I need, and just fill in the blank. I'm like, you don't need, you want. Right? It's a very big distinction between needing and wanting, right? You need bread and water. You want a chocolate Danish, okay? You don't need a chocolate Danish. Nobody needs a chocolate Danish, right? I love chocolate Danish, right? But I don't need it, okay? There's a big distinction between these two, okay? So Ramchal elaborates on the effectiveness of this technique. So what did he say was the technique? To just reflect on the deficient nature of the pleasures of this world and their lowliness. Okay, that was what he said. So Ramchal elaborates on the effectiveness of this technique. Ki hine ma shemate Hateva el hatanugim oile. The method of effective is effective because the force that sways one nature towards these low worldly pleasures, ad sheyitztorech kol kach koach v'tachbolus lahafrisho mehem, to the point that it requires so much willpower and so many tactics to separate one's nature from them, who pitui ha'inayim is the seductive effect of worldly delights on the eyes. Haniftim bimar'ei hadvorim asher hu tov ve'orev l'chora, which are seduced, our eyes, which are seduced by the external appearance of things, by which every pleasure seems to be good and pleasing. One is drawn to what one sees, right? That's what we say in the Shema. Uri'item oto, right? Lo taturu acharei levavchem v'acharei einechem, and don't follow your heart and your eyes. Your eyes see and your heart desires. Don't go window shopping, because you know what happens the next time? Whatever you desired from the window shopping, you now buy. Right? That's what happens. Okay, don't admit. It's fine. That's the reality.
I don't know
The
what
reality
you're
is,
about personally.
Susan has no idea what I'm talking
I
about.
don't have any idea what you're talking about.
So
Right,
okay,
Dave?
so let me just share with you. It's an amazing thing. Okay, let's take the wall that's behind you. Look at this wall right here. See this wall? Looks beautiful, right? Beautiful, clean wall. You see a thermostat? Okay. What really is that wall? Look at that closet over there. You see that beautiful closet over there? Beautiful closet. What really is that closet? That closet and that wall are really broken pieces of, sheetrock put together, or some broken pieces of wood, chips of wood put together. But all they did was on the outside, they made a nice surface, right? That's all they did, so that to the eye it's pleasing. Really, it's rotten wood in there, right? But they put this beautiful coating, they put plaster, and they paint it nicely, and now it looks like it's a beautiful wall. And we get convinced by beauty, all based on what our eyes show us. Correct? Anybody who owns a house can tell you, right, how much we have going on in our homes. We can have pipes that burst in our attic. We can have so many different things, and then we have to repair it, and it looks like as if everything is normal, right? You don't see what happened. You don't see what really is going on up there. That is 6 different pieces of sheetrock from each time you had to replace things, right? But as long as it looks nice to the eye, that's what we see. And that's what Ramchal is warning us here. There's actually, I have never been told, except for once, by a rabbi to see a movie. Okay? I was told by a rabbi to watch The Matrix.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay? And it's very interesting because what it teaches you on a Jewish level is that everything you see is a facade. When you look at a BMW, you know what that BMW really is? It's broken pieces of metal that are soldered together, right? Look at once before they paint it, right? You ever go to an auto body shop and you see these pieces, they solder them together, and then they have these machines that sand it down and make it all smooth, and then they cover it with a beautiful paint, and they glaze it, and now it looks beautiful, like it's brand new. What is it? It's really scrap metal. But to the eye, it looks like a BMW. Okay? That's what Ramchal is telling us. Don't let your eyes trick you. Don't let your eyes trick you that when you see, the ideas that come to our mind of what Hollywood sells us as romance, or what the world tells us is good, look beyond it. Don't settle for what your eye judges externally, but look at their virtues. Okay, any questions? What Ramchal calls this, he calls this pitui ha'inayim. It's seductive effect on the eyes. Okay, it's the seduction of the eyes, right? to convince us that this is good, convince us that this is nice, and then we want it. And Ramchal is telling us, be very, very careful. Be very, very careful. He says, in fact, this is the seductive effect that caused the very first transgression to be committed. Adam and Eve eating of the fruit of the tree of knowledge. Edus hakosov, as scripture testifies in relating to Eve's how Eve succumbed to eating of the fruit. Listen to these words. You'll see it in a way that we have never seen it before. The woman saw, what did she see? She saw with her eyes that the tree was good for eating and that it was a delight for the eyes, and she took of its fruit and ate. Likewise, every attraction to worldly pleasures begins with the activity's visual effect on its beholder. Let me ask you a question, okay? So you go to a buffet and you have 2 pieces of steak. One looked like it fell off the grill, and one looks really, really nice. Okay, those are for those who eat meat. But if you don't, okay, and you want to eat vegetables, so we'll be gentle for you, okay? So you see a nice cucumber, and you see a cucumber that looks like it was beaten up a little. They're both cucumbers, right? But which one will we pick? We'll pick the one which is nice, right? How do we like to be served when we go to a restaurant, when we're home? Of course, I'm sure, David, this is dinner every night. Susan makes a beautiful plate. It's with all the colors, and everything is designed beautifully on your plate, and you have this much of protein and everything, right? It's all organized, right? Do you want it just thrown on a pan and go take it yourself, or do you want it nice on a plate? Why? Because one is beautiful to the eyes. So we pick what's beautiful to the eyes. We get convinced that that is the reality. And the truth is, our sages tell us and warn us, that was the sin of Eve. That's what led to Eve's sin, that she followed her eyes. I can't hear you. I can't hear you, Eliza. You're muted.
Sorry, I thought you were in my head. Is that the Yetzer Hara, or like
Absolutely, yeah.
Like
That's the Yetzer Hara. The Yetzer Hara confuses us and convinces us that what we see is just good. What could be wrong with this cake? Nothing.
It's an
It's
illusion.
delicious. I want to eat this cake. Right? It looks so innocent. It looks so beautiful. What can ever be wrong with it?
Really good.
That's right.
But that's
It's
Hashem
the looks.
testing.
It's what it is.
Right. What is that again?
It's Hashem testing us, right?
That's correct. And that's a constant test that we have. Say hello.
Hola. ¿Cómo estás?
So this is the test that we constantly have in our perspective, is we see things and we're convinced that what we see, everything is good. And that's what Ramchal is warning us, to be careful of the things that we see and not to become tempted, because those are just convincing to the eyes. Aval. However, when it becomes clear to a person that through constant reflection that this good is utterly fictitious, meaning that it is illusory and without any real endurance, meaning it is not the real deal. I'll give you an example to this in a second. Okay, whereas the evil inherent in it is real due to its base nature. Or evil is likely to result from it in reality, such as in the form of ill health. So I'll give you an example. That chocolate cake looks innocent, right? What could be wrong with just enjoying a nice piece of chocolate cake, right? From pastry chef Ashley's kitchen, right? I mean, come on. What could be wrong?
Lots of calories.
Oh, that means that although it may look good to the eyes, we have to understand that it could be damaging to our health. Now, it cannot, sometimes it's not only damaging to our health, it's damaging health physically, it can be damaging to our health spiritually. And this is what our sages are warning us. Let me give you an example. You know, my grandfather learned in the Mir Yeshiva by Rabbi Yerucham Levavitz. I mentioned this many hundreds of times, I'm sure, throughout our classes. And Rabbi Yerucham Levavitz was a special man in that he lived this. Everything we're talking about in these chapters of abstinence, perishos, was him. And he amazingly instilled this in his students. He instilled this idea of being completely recognizing of the baseness of materialism. Okay? One of his students left during the war. He left to the United States, and he was a secular Jew. It was told that he once said, the student was asked, you learned by the great Rabbi Yerucham, you learned by the master, right? See, he says, I'll never forgive him. He says, I'll never forgive him. What did he do to you? He said, once I saw him, I was never able to enjoy from this world again. He put this reality into their mind so clearly that everything they saw was, is it or is it not a tool to help me grow? Right? So he couldn't enjoy. It's a very powerful thing, okay? But how many of us are at the level where we can even see the idea or understand the concept of what it means to abstain from something which is physical, and that you know what, this is just not good for me, I want to stay away from it. Yeah, Dave.
So are you trying to say, let's go back to your initial premise. I go to a restaurant or a buffet, and don't tell my wife I was at a buffet, and there is a steak that's cooked the way I like, it's medium rare, it looks beautiful. And then I see another steak that's overdone, it's got cracks in it and everything. I should not take the one I like, I should go to the other one?
No. Of course you should take the one you like. Of course you should take the one you like. But you have to evaluate whether or not it is even good for you.
Well,
any of them. We're not saying not to enjoy life, but not to get lost in the indulgence of physicality. That's the idea.
I don't know if that's a physicality thing. I think that's...
Of course it is.
You would take the inferior piece of meat?
No, I wouldn't take the inferior. For sure I wouldn't. But I'm just saying, what I was trying to establish earlier is the fact that our eyes sell things to us.
But we also need to know about moderation.
Oh, so right. So that is the key here. The key for us in year 2020 is for us to know what it means to have moderation.
Have a slice of cake, not the whole cake.
Oh, you can have a slice of cake, enjoy it, but recognize that this isn't life. This isn't life. Take a bite and enjoy it. You know, I teach my children every day, aside from saying a blessing, I say just stop and say, thank you, Hashem. Thank you. Thank you for this cup of water, right? Aside from the blessing that we're making, but just put it in your own words. Feel that connection. Here you go. Thank you, Hashem. Thank you, Hashem. Right? To constantly feel a connection to what it is that you're experiencing.
But I'm agreeing with you, Rabbi, about don't eat the whole cake. I'm just saying if you've got two alternatives, right? You're going to take the one that appeals to you more. You're not. That's the way human nature is.
Correct.
If I got a choice of my delicious steak that's medium rare that I like, I'm not going to choose the one that I don't like. And I don't think that's an alternative that people ever do.
Right. I don't think we were suggesting, and I'm not suggesting, that we shouldn't enjoy life. I'm not suggesting that. What we're saying is that we shouldn't get carried away by the pleasures of life and become people who are overindulgent, cannot control ourselves. And you know what? You assign, let's say you need this much to eat, so you have this much to eat and not more. And not allow yourself to get to a point where you become sick from, or God forbid, there are people who get diabetes because they don't eat healthy. There are people who have other types of illnesses because they don't eat healthy, right? That's because we are not in control of this specific idea that we're talking about. And getting this muscle to be stronger, our willpower and our connection to what is really important, that is our goal. Right? So what we're not trying to say that a good steak, the way you like it medium rare, okay, enjoy your raw steak. But either way, okay, no, I'm not going to get into this. Oh no, that's a can of worms I opened up here. Okay,
No.
So Rabbi, you like your steak well done, right? Okay, I know the next question. Okay, so no, we're not saying don't enjoy life. Enjoy life, but it should be, like Bill said, in moderation. It has to be, that it doesn't take over our lives. That is what we're aiming for. Okay? So, so if a person recognizes the evil inherent in it is real, right? So the person will surely come to despise it and not desire it at all. This then is the entire practice to which a person must train his mind if he wishes to overcome temptation and acquire the trait of precious, of abstinence. So let's give an example here, okay? Imagine people who are morbidly obese, okay? People who are very, very, very overweight, and they go to a conference. When in this conference they start talking about your metabolism, and they start talking about how your body breaks down all the foods and how you need to be eating less processed foods, and they go into this whole thing, and for 6 hours they're drilling into your brain that the foods have chemicals in it that the body's not able to, and we were done. We're like, okay, you know what? I got to start eating more salads. I got to be more healthy. I have to eat more natural. I have to stop eating, manufactured products. Okay, it makes sense, right? And then you leave for lunch. Okay, and what would you say when you actually bite into your French fries?
Tastes like salad.
I say it's a vegetable, right? So they said vegetables. Here we go, right? So I'll tell you what people will say. People say, but it tastes so good. I love this, right? So that's where the challenge is going to be, is where your knowledge tells you, I know that this isn't good for me. And your desire says, but it's so good. I love it. It tastes so good, right? So that's where we're going to have these two are going to be fighting it out. And now we have to decide, are we going to go to the side of this is what's better for my health, or am I going to go to the side, this is just what's giving into my temptation? How many times do we see a snack and we're like, I know this isn't good. I know it's great. It'll taste great, right? But I know it's not good for me. And then on the other side, you say, but it's just so small. You know, one of the great marketing shticks that they did, it really is a great shtick. Okay, this is good marketing. The two words, bite size. Okay, you know what bite size means? No, it means you're too dumb to realize that you're going to have 3 bite size and have a full thing.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Right? So here's how it goes. Okay, this is how the bite size world of fakeness goes. Okay, is that instead of having the full chocolate bar, you're not going to have the full chocolate bar. You're going to have a bite size, and then another bite size, and another bite size. Before you know it, you had your whole chocolate bar. But it's a way for us to convince us, our Yetzer Hara, so to speak, that although it's not good for you, you can do it anyway. It's like this myth of Diet Coke. You can still have Coke, and it'll still be healthy for you. Well, it's going to come at the expense of something. Right? We're in a generation today which is called a Coke Zero generation. We're in a Coke Zero generation where you can have your cake and eat it too. Right? Where you're not going to be worried about getting diabetes from drinking the Coke. And that's not the real world, because that doesn't happen. They're going to have to put something in there. Okay, I'm not going to get into the whole argument of whether or not aspartame is good for you or not good for you, whether your body can't process it or can't process it. You do your homework after. Okay? But the idea that you want to have something healthy, but you also want to have it taste like your Coke. Okay, you understand? And really what we have to do is make a decision, yes or no. Okay? That's the reality of the struggle that we're going to be facing. This then, al kain zehu kol halimud shetzorach sheyilamed ha'adam esichlo. This then is the entire practice to which a person must train his mind if he wishes to overcome temptation and acquire perishus, abstinence. Which really means now already is going to a point where perishus means balance. That's really what it means. To have balance in your life. And control. And make decisions. Lahakir to recognize the feebleness of these worldly pleasures and their falsehood. He must reinforce this recognition until he reflexively despises these pleasures. Right? So it's not to a point where you get to the point where you're sitting there saying, should I have this chocolate bar or should I not have this chocolate bar? Should I drink this can of Coke or should I not drink this can of Coke? Oh, what I was telling you is also they have these little cans of Coke, the little ones, which are like only 100 calories. They didn't take away the sugar. They just made it smaller. Right? So it's the same poison, but in less quantity. Okay? So until he reflexively despises these pleasures, and it will not be difficult in his eyes to cast them away from himself, as he will not feel deprived if he does not have them. So if a person realizes that let's pick a food that's really not healthy. I think candy is awful. Okay, I have no sweet tooth. I don't want any candies. I'll take chocolate every day of the week. Right, but candies, like just hard candies, right? These Jolly Dranchers and all of these, all of these different jelly beans and whatever these things, licorice and all. I have no desire for them. Not a single desire for them.
Barbecue.
I don't think it's. What's that again?
Barbecue potato chips.
There you go. You know it. You know it. Right? That's my weakness. So let's talk about my weakness. It's fine. I don't mind being put on the spot here. Okay. So if I am able to crystallize the damage that this can do to my health, right? Then all I need to do is clarify and crystallize its effect that it will have on me, and then it won't be a struggle for me not to eat it. Do you understand? If we're able to crystallize how bad this is for you, then it won't be a challenge for you to just say, you know what? I'm not a fool, right? Imagine this. Imagine if I told anyone here, you come here, you sit down next to me, I tell you, by the way, I dropped a poison pill into one of these cups over here, okay? Is there anybody here who would say, yeah, I'll take my chances, 50-50, it's not a big deal, right? Anybody? No. Obviously, you wouldn't take it. right? Who in their right mind would say 50%, it's pretty good likelihood I'll still live? No. If a person understands that this to them is poison, and again, I don't want to only look at it as from the perspective of food, but food is the easiest one for us to identify. All right, we're going to start the new torch diet tomorrow, right? Tonight, not tomorrow. Tonight, we start the new torch diet, right? And what does the torch diet do? It doesn't tell you what to eat, what not to eat. It says before you get into the kitchen, before you do any of that, internalize the idea of whether or not this food is good for you or bad for you. And the minute you realize and you identify whether or not it is good or bad for you, you won't have the challenge anymore as to whether or not should I eat it. That's what we're trying to do here. You understand? The minute we understand the damage it could do to you, we understand its negative nature, it won't be difficult anymore to abstain from it. Okay? And this same idea, Ramchal tells us, can be applied to every other area in life. So whether it's materialism, whether it's shopping, whether it's any other thing, a person has the ability to abstain if they have this clarity. If they have this clarity. So Ramchal continues here. Ad sheme'elav yimasbam. He must reinforce his recognition until he reflexively despises these pleasures on his own, right? It's not going to be a challenge for him. He understands it on his own that this is no good. And it will not be difficult in his eyes to cast them away from himself, as he will not feel deprived if he does not have them. Okay, so again, Dave, this can also be on the quantity of food. This could be on any area. A person says, you know what, I like good food. I'm not eating unhealthy, I just eat unhealthy amounts. Oh, so let's talk about that. Is it good, is it not good? And the minute a person is able to internalize intellectually, right, it's not difficult for him to understand and say, you know what, now it's time for me to just stop. Because it's not good for me to eat more. Okay? We're on the same page here? Everyone good? Okay. Ramchal provides an example of the fleeting and potentially harmful nature of worldly pleasures. Hu tanog hamachol, hu hayoser muchash umurgash. Consider, of all worldly pleasures, the pleasure of eating is the most tangible and palpable. Hayesh davar ave v'nifsod yoser mimenu. But is there anything more short-lived and perishable than the fleeting pleasure of eating? Sharei ein shiuru elo kishur beis habliya. Why, the pleasure lasts only as long as the food is contained in the eater's throat. Kivon sheyatze mimena v'yarad b'bnei me'ayim. Once it leaves the throat and descends into the digestive tract, aved zichro. Right? Any memory of the tasty food is lost. It's gone. Think about that. Right over here, this section, this is it. Right? From when we put the food in our mouth till it gets into our throat, past our throat, and it gets into our esophagus. Right? That's it. It's done. No more. It's such a short-lived pleasure. And yet, it's one of the most abused of all pleasures. Okay? Once it leaves his throat and descends into the digestive tract, avad zichro, any memory of the tasty food is lost. And it is forgotten as if it never existed. Im ochal barburim avusim, as to the feeling of being satiated that remains, a person is equally sated whether he ate a delicacy such as fattened geese, kimo im ochal lechem kibor im ochal mimenu k'dei svia, or if he ate coarse wholemeal bread, if he had eaten enough of the bread to satisfy his hunger. So what Ramchal is saying, really, whether you eat, a good steak, you eat your French fries, right? You eat your good food, right? You're not going to be any fuller than you eating bread and water, right? Essentially, you will be just as full and just as pleased at the end of the day with this or that. But what's the difference? Kol shekenim yasim el libo. This lesson is all the more compelling if one considers hachaloyim haroyim sheyicholim lavo alav machmas achiloso. The many illnesses, if one considers the many illnesses that may afflict him due to his unhealthy eating habits. Or if he at least considers the uncomfortable feeling of heaviness that comes over him after excessive eating. As well as the fumes, the drowsiness-inducing properties that will dull his mind. Hine al kol ele vane shelo yachpot ha'adam badavar hazeh. Why, with all of these considerations, a person surely will not desire this indulgence, kevan shetovaso eino tova, since its good effect is not truly good. Vira'afso ra, whereas its bad effect is truly bad. So if a person intellectually understands this, it paints a very different picture for indulging in these areas, particularly food, right? We know food, right? Dave, we like good food, but consider that food that we eat that's unhealthy for us, that food is all in our 2 inches of pleasure in our mouth, in our throat. That's it. And yet, it can make us feel awful. Oh, I ate too much. Oh, this wasn't good for me. This was right, David. We ever have that? Of course we have that. Right? I'll give you an example. Cholent is not exactly the most. It's good. It's really good, right? But not always the healthiest of foods, right? Sometimes it can, right? So a person has to know, right? There's a mitzvah to eat a hot food Shabbos morning, so that's where the whole cholent came from. It came from the heretics who said, no, you can't eat hot food on Shabbos. So our sages went and intentionally instilled a custom where the Jewish people are forever going to eat a hot food Shabbos morning to show that you are allowed to have food that is hot on Shabbos. Okay, but either way, Friday night can be hot from when you cooked it on Friday. But Shabbos day, it has to stay warm, right? You have to keep it warm. Okay, so either way, there's a difference between eating bad food and overindulging in bad food.
Mm-hmm.
There's a very big difference between eating bad food and overindulging in bad food. Okay, so he says like this. He says, whereas the bad effect is truly bad, the same considerations apply to other worldly pleasures as well. V'sh'ar kol ha'anos sheba'olam kamochein, right? And all the other worldly pleasures are the same as the pleasures associated with food. Ilu yizbonin bohem, if a person contemplates their nature, yireh shafilu atova meduva bohem, he will see that even the illusory good feeling that one derives from indulging in them, eineno elu lizman muat, lasts only for a short while. V'harashi yochel yivoled mehem, while the ill effect that can result from them, koshev v'aruch, is rather harsh and protracted. Ad shelo ye'os l'shum ba'al seichel la'sum atzmo b'sakanos haros, so that it is unbecoming of any sensible person to subject himself to the potentially bad risks. Al reva chatova muatahu, right? For the paltry benefit of the insignificant good, and this is obvious. How many people, for one instance of pleasure, quote unquote, lost their families having an affair, right? For one instance of pleasure, lost their business, for they stole, and they lost, right? For one little thing, because people don't calculate the cost-benefit analysis. What is the benefit that comes out of this? Is it worth it for me to take off 10 years of my life for the good food I'm going to have now, or not? So maybe I should make a healthier choice. At the end of the day, they're both going to be pleasing, because in 5 minutes, it's not going to make a difference to me if I had the fattening food or if I had the healthy food. It's only to our eyes. It's only to our mind, our imagination, that we convince ourselves, oh, I'm missing out. If I only had decent food, if I only had this fatty, delicious, topping-filled cake. Now, I want to give a caveat here. I want to make it clear. This does not mean, do not go after this class is done and say, Rabbi Wolbe said donuts are evil. Potato chips is evil. Steaks is evil. He said you shouldn't eat anything except for bread and water. Now, I'm not saying that at all. Okay? Rather, what I'm saying is that we need to consciously decide what is healthy and unhealthy for us. And by that decision, by that barometer, to choose what to eat, not by what our eyes see. Because if we leave it to the eyes will eat everything they want, everything they desire. Oh, it looks good, let me have it. Oh, right? And we run after, and it doesn't do good for us. Right? Who would want to have, it's an amazing thing, who would want to have another 10 years of life? Right? The healthy decisions we make with our food today, by the way, not eating enough is not either good. So a person needs to know what is the amount of food I need to eat. I would even say that if we can come up with some type of like a plate system, this is how much you need to eat to stay healthy. Put on it whatever you want, but this is it, right? That would be fine, because it's a balanced amount, right? It's also quantity, because the same people who can't control what they eat can't control how much they eat. It's really an interesting dilemma, right? The same people who can't control what they eat can't control how much they eat. So, Ramchal here is giving us a very, very clear, he says, V'zeh poshet, and this is obvious, that a person has to take control of this. Okay, so the commentary here on number 7 here says as follows. He says, some of the other worldly pleasures alluded to in this paragraph are mentioned in the previous 2 chapters: conjugal relations, elegant dress, and conversation. In each case, the pleasure lasts only for the duration of the experience. Afterward, the good feeling dissipates, while any negative consequences deriving from the experience directly or even just from the expenses incurred, as in the cases of extravagant clothing, can reach far into the future. Keeping this reality in mind will ease the task of withdrawing from such pleasures. It's like you can't afford the Bentley, but you can buy it. You know why?
On time.
You'll pay it over time. Exactly. So that, right? So now you really wanted to buy this luxury vehicle. You wanted to buy this car, but you can't afford it. So now for the next 12 years, you'll be paying everything you earn, so that, right, you might lose your house, but you'll have your Bentley, right? I know people, by the way, who are like that. I know someone like that, actually, in my neighborhood. Has a rental home, but he has his Bentley, okay? So, right, it really is, where are the priorities? Where are the priorities? Okay. When evaluating the true worth of physical pleasures, it is also helpful to compare their fleeting nature and the inevitable regret over the negative side effects to the lasting satisfaction derived from performing a good deed. When a person passes a difficult moral test or helps a fellow in a significant way, the good feeling from having done the right thing can last a lifetime. Can last a lifetime. This striking contrast alone should lead a thoughtful person to recognize the fallacy of earthly pleasures and the genuine goodness of mitzvah performance. Right? Right? If you imagine, you ask someone, what is the greatest vacation you've ever taken? What is the greatest vacation? What is the greatest vacation? Right? So I'll tell you what will be the greatest vacation. It won't be that they went to those islands and they went there and they stayed in this amazing resort, or they went on this cruise. No, I'll tell you what it was. Is that when on one of those trips someone fell into the water and they were drowning, he jumped into the water, right, and saved the person's life. That was his greatest vacation. Okay? That means the experience comes and goes, but when you do that good deed, that's what sticks with you a lifetime. When you do one selfless act, that's what lasts with you a lifetime. Right? So the vacations are great. The food is great. All of those other pleasures we discussed are fantastic, but they don't last but for the time that you enjoyed them. For that moment, for that fleeting moment. While good deeds last for a lifetime. You can always look back at that time that you jumped off the deck to go save that person's life. It's like, wow, that was so amazing, right? I went out of my way to go help that person, to help carry their bags for them. I picked them up from the airport at 3 o'clock in the morning. Right? That's what true pleasure is. True pleasure doesn't last a moment. True pleasure lasts a lifetime. Okay, so my dear friends, it's been a wonderful journey here tonight, and I'm looking forward to continuing next week. We are on the bottom of, we're on the top of page 302, and we'll continue here next week. This was a very fast hour. I want to thank you all. I really enjoyed it. If there are any questions, we'll sign off from our friends on Facebook. Thank you for joining us. Please join this and all of the other incredible Torch programs that are available. You can go to torchpodcast.com. You can go to torchvideo.com. You can go to torchweb.com or torchzoom.com and enjoy these classes every day. We have classes every single day. There's no break. Torah never stops. And shalom from New Jersey and from Texas.